Welcome to the Mystic Detectives podcast, where we seek to unlock the wonders of the unknown. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal Miller.
And I'm your other host, Andrea Marziano. Hi, Crystal. How are you today?
Doing great. I'm a little tired because we had some terrible weather last night.
Well, you do live in the belt of terrible weather in
Uh,
Oklahoma there.
I do. I
What
live in Tornado Alley.
is that what you experienced yesterday?
Yep, we had tornadoes. There was a city or a town about an hour away from me that was just absolutely desolated. It's called Sulphur, Oklahoma. And then we had
Decimated?
what? Yes, decimated.
I love
Whatever.
it.
Eng- Words is hard. And then another smaller one touched down about 2 miles away from us. We had a wild, like lightning storm and um, ungodly winds, but we fortunately never got into the hurricane. But man, I hate that because we have to go when the tornado sirens go on. We have to go shelter, and this is an old house, so we just go literally have to go into closets.
Oh, very
So
exciting.
yeah, it's not
When
great.
Because I'm a Gen Xer, we all started becoming adults at about 5. I was babysitting 2 small children when I was 10 years old. We were in Texas, and it was a hurricane that was coming. And the parents were in Houston, and I was across the bridge, I don't even remember what it's called, with their children by myself. And here came this hurricane, and my mother was trapped across town. She couldn't come get me or assist me at all. And I had known all the things I was supposed to do. So I took the kids into the bathroom. They were something like 2 and 4, and we were in there. We were playing games. They were on pillows in the bathtub. And I am inside being hysterical because I was like, I don't know what to do now. I'm in here. We have snacks, we have pillows, but I don't know what's next. And I had closed all the curtains. And then we were in there about an hour and a half, and I was starting to run out of fun. and and again, I was 10, so I heard the phone ringing back in the day when it was a landline, and it was out in the other room. And I didn't want to go out because I thought that's the very moment the hurricane's going to hit us and the windows are going to blow in. I'm going to die from glass shards. Uh, Not that I was dramatic at 10 or anything, but but I was so worried. And so I let it ring and I didn't go out. And then it rang like 3 more times in a row. I thought, I'm going to have to go out because this got probably their parents or my parents or somebody important. So I crawled out, I did an army crawl out to the phone. I reached my arm up to the real thing, pulled it down, laid flat as I could. Hello? And it was the mother of the children. And she was beside herself because she had called 3 times and I didn't answer. And I told her what was happening, how I was trying to protect her children, and I was afraid to come out, blah, blah, blah. And she was glad about that. And they were stuck in Houston for at least the night. And I am, again, a 10-year-old with their 2 small children. And later on in the day, my mother was able to come and get us. So we all went to my house, but it was quite the adventure. So I definitely feel you on that one. But it was way dramatic. And it didn't end up being a full hurricane, but it was a really, really bad storm. And they can
Yeah.
come up like that in those areas, just lickety split.
Well, and this storm was headed right for us. I mean, we were looking at the um like what are they called? The forecast.
Trajectory.
Jeez.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, the forecast and the trajectory, and it was just literally like coming up right diagonally through our town. And so yeah, it was really nerve-wracking. And when the sirens go off, that's the worst because then it's like it means we're actually in danger, like there's a real possibility. And so we have to go sit in closets because they're in the middle of the house and they have no windows. So blah. But
oh
that's
my
but
goodness.
other than that, I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent news. Well, on that note, we have some special guests today, and I'm very excited about that. And I'll go ahead, as usual, let them introduce themselves.
All right, my name is Weston Flater. I own High Country Treasures here in Sequim, Washington. I'm a GIA certified gemologist and a prior service Army service member, I suppose would be the way to say that. We work specifically in the science of gemstones, doing broad form appraisal. Identification is one of the cornerstones of our business, and basically sharing the education behind the sale. So that's what I'm here to do today. I hope I can answer a few questions or weigh in on some incidents because although I wouldn't describe myself as a believer, to the 100% in precious stone therapy, I cannot deny scientific evidence. So, be bringing some of that to the table today and kind of opening it up for opportunity for discussion. Again, my name's Wes, and I'm here to help. So, Justin?
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Justin Stiles. I am also a veteran, though I'm an Air Force veteran. I am associated with High Country Treasures, as Wes and I are friends, and we have helped. I've helped him build this amazing thing that is High Country Treasures around his knowledge and passion for gemstone. Um, Basically, my background is in currently, I'm a family nurse practitioner in primary care. I work mainly in men's health, but I also have a very holistic focused practice. And though my clients often come to us because they have sexual dysfunction or things like that, typical dude issues, aha, now I have you, and we're going to work on your depression and your hypertension and your prediabetes. And oh, by the way, I'm going to care about your satisfaction of life and we'll ask you about it. So towards that end, I'm working towards being a board certified nurse coach, which is life and health coaching, and so that is currently influencing my life passions, which is outdoor sports and activities. I'm father to 2 little kids, 50% of the time, and in the other half of the time, I try and run and climb and stay sharp as a nurse. And so I'm really stoked to be on this podcast and just share whatever perspective I have. I do have definite thoughts on integrative health, and it's a topic I'm very passionate about, and absolutely gemstone therapy would fall into that. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks
Wow,
for being
that's
here.
awesome. I'm very excited. And one of the things that is super fun for me with this lineup is because three of us are trained medical professionals and looking at some of the alternatives. And Wes, I met, I guess it's been three
Probably a
months
month.
or so
Yeah.
ago. A
Yes,
month, you say a month, I say three, I don't know, a
I
while.
live in dog years, so I mean I'm trying to climb the ladder is every bit of our day. So we time just passes, man. That is the truth. Time just
That's
passes. Because only 2 years ago we were literally sitting around a table discussing on how to bring high country into an oversaturated market, and it has
mhm.
been nothing but education since then. I mean, and beyond the book education, the individual education with the individual clients who come in, we see everything from the millionaire who wants to buy a 50-year anniversary present for his wife to the person who just can afford a handful of stones because they're pretty to look at. So it takes all comers. And, that's probably a really good point to start with gemstone therapy. And it's three simple words. Are you happy? And I'll tell you this much. I've seen some of the happiest people coming in, and I wouldn't say blaming, but I'd say assigning responsibility to the ability to have something so perfect and so complete. And if it makes you happy, once those endorphins are released in your brain, we all know here, be it medical professional or scientist, we all know that that is a measurable, quantifiable improvement of life. So the question becomes how effective and what caused that effect? I did a little bit of research over the last week after talking with you about energy transference. And the one thing that I found with the scientific mind, you look for uniformity and control. The one thing that I found is stones associated with bringing someone happiness, like citrine or golden topaz, they've been the same for thousands of years, no matter what culture. It's the same rock being used to treat the same ailments across human history. And that's something where, as a scientist, I can say, okay, well, what about a different rock? Do they work in different ways? Do they work on different chakras? Do they enhance the flow of energy through your body? Or is it simply an endorphin response based on getting your way and having something beautiful?
I love that. Getting your way and having something beautiful. Some really
Very,
fun
it's
things.
just as rare as a gemstone, in my opinion, is to have both of those things exist. And with High Country, we didn't want the heavy retail. We didn't want an experience where someone in a suit across the mall parking lot tells you to buy it because a diamond is forever. We wanted people to see and kind of pierce that veil as to how much does this stone really cost? How much does it work for me as far as a happiness generator? And can that be something, and especially given with intent, can that be something that will improve someone's health holistically, as Justin would say? And the answer is yes. I mean, the answer is resounding yes. And it's not just the immediate sale either. And that's something that I'm getting to notice across as more time increases and High Country grows from being just a single office enterprise to being across the country and across the world. I'm noticing that the happiness associated with gemstones doesn't typically wear off overnight. And the first thing these people will do with a new stone is show a friend.
Mhm.
So there's connectivity across all areas. For instance, we have a cutter in Tucson who just finished topaz for us that came out of Brazil and took about a month to get here from Brazil. But I've spoken to every person in this process at their level of the industry. And these are the purest form of awesome that we can bring to the market because, as I like to say, and I believe I've said this to you, Andrea, every time a stone changes hands, there's $1 assigned to it. Every single time. And for this instance, these stones have never changed hands. They've been brought out of the ground, given to us, and are now sitting waiting to go back into the industry as what they've become. And that metamorphosis, that process has been just incredible to watch. The amount of connectivity between people in different countries working towards the same goal here outside of the dollar is something that's it's really cool. It's a really cool accomplishment, and it doesn't always pay the bills, but when it does, it's amazing. I mean, when you see it connect, and we get to be just a single part of someone's story. I mean, we've done 9 anniversary sets now from ground up, and those people are the best people because we get to be a period on the end of one of their sentences, and that's pretty cool.
I love that phrase. That's really
Yeah, I like
fun.
the way you put that.
Yeah. So, Justin, coming from a different perspective, I know that you've connected with Wes for the gems and the stones like that. What impact or what sort of experiences have you had with stones and or crystals or energy healing thus far in your career?
Sure. So I very much line up with the American Nursing Association standards of kind of how they approach complementary, alternative, and integrative health. And really, they haven't written a great paper on it in almost 25 years, unfortunately. But that's also perhaps because their stance was forward looking to begin with. And doesn't necessarily need a whole lot of evolution. And basically, their stance and my stance is that it comes down to 3 things. Is your alternative therapy safe? And they
Hmm.
love to use, ANA loves to use vitamins in their classic example. It's like, oh, vitamins are fine, they're safe, you can get them over the counter. Are they? A, E, D, and K are fat soluble, and those have an LD50 that's quantifiable and reachable and can cause harm. So,
Hmm.
gemstones, are they safe? Uh, Unequivocally, yes, they're safe. We're not talking in lieu of therapy and debating antibiotics versus topaz for
Citrine.
whatever
Yeah.
use,
Yeah.
right? That study's not going to happen, and I'm okay with that. A different study could happen, perhaps. Please, maybe do good research so I can lean into it. Second issue being scope of practice, and I'm sure Andrea, you get to run into this. You're a Reiki practitioner, licensed.
Hmm.
How does this
Yes.
fit into your nursing flow? Like, where do you is it billable? Can it be billable?
Mm,
It goes into nursing hours.
I actually do my practices in completely separate modalities just
mm,
because to overlap is scary at best and also potentially life threatening. Well,
Mhm.
maybe, but license threatening is what I meant.
Yes.
And so I keep those things very separate because I do carefully watch scope. And people will
Mhm.
ask me, "Well, you're a nurse, right?" And I said, "Not today."
Yeah, that's right. You got to silo that stuff. And then, oh, by the way, if you're going to try and bill insurance, you better not refer to yourself because that's a problem too.
Oh my
So,
goodness. Yeah, I was a case manager for a long time after I became a massage therapist. And oh my goodness, I knew I could assist people, but I also knew I could not assist those people. And it can be very challenging to stay in your lane. And people will often want me to reach outside that lane. And I just don't. It's not worth it in so many levels. And one of the things that Crystal and I are very careful to mention during our podcast is that we're not giving medical advice. And we are saying these are some things that a person can consider. You'd want to talk to your healthcare provider if you want to change any kind of modality that you're using, and just to know that there are other possibilities. And so we have, I think, in every episode said something along those lines, haven't we, Crystal?
Yeah. Yep.
that makes sense. It's kind of basic informed consent, which should apply to anything. Hey,
Mhm.
here's what we're talking about. Here's the alternatives. Here's what's gonna we hope happen if you do it. Here's what might go wrong. Here's what you could do instead, and here's what happens if you do nothing.
Since I have 3 of you healthcare people all in the same place, this is something that, I was surprised to see in my own treatment. Being a disabled veteran at 80%, I'm in and out of the doctor's office all the time, dealing with the same things that 90% of disabled veterans over 80% deal with: chronic pain,
Mhm.
anxiety, I mean, nighttime is the worst time, and I will say that because that's the only time that my voice is the only voice in my own head. But thinking about where stones and things fall into medical practice, we have to start looking and appreciating where they already are. I take acupuncture twice a week and I'm in and out of the clinic, but what he uses to augment that frequency is a piece of jasper. And he's very much a non-spiritual person. And he would say this is because it transfers the energy directly of the frequency and vibration to your rib cage where I need it to go. Personal experience has told him that a piece of jasper allows that to work better than the recommended medical piece of equipment that he has. Also, the use of heavy metals and precious metals and quartz and all the electronics in, in the doctor's office. They're quick to discount that the stone itself is doing something, but yet they're quick to look at their quartz watch beating at 30,000 revolutions per minute and saying, well, there's no energy there. It's everywhere. There are stones in all kinds of our technologies. And if they don't fit from nature, they're manufactured as a synthetic. I mean, ruby and laser, things like this that we're willing to mention and notice and give a nod to things that are technical in our hands, but we're still not willing to embrace them fully as a direct channel for the human body. And I can understand that, and especially after what Justin said, being safe. I mean, we live in a world where, as educated individuals who pursue these things for a living, people come to us more for advice than they do for a fix. And far be it for me to have anyone put anything in practice and call it doctrine. You know, First Thessalonians doesn't exist. But if I'm seeing it in, a more secular sense in the office already, in the doctor's hands already, of course I'm obligated to ask. And simple conversations like having my acupuncturist say a piece of jasper is a better conductor for me than a piece of porcelain would be, and more interesting for the client. Well, you're already into Eastern medicine there. The minute that stone has a role in your modern room, in, like you said, keeping them separate, the minute they're not separate, that can be exploited and measured. I'm finding it's getting people to notice that small of a detail is hard.
No,
Yeah.
and I agree. When we were talking recently, Crystal and I was laughing because we were acting like, oh, I mean, we understand that these trainings, knowledges, and things have been centuries old, and we're like, oh, look, and it's not as if we think they're new things. What we're looking for, especially through our Mystic Detectives podcast and other offerings, is to say, hey, this is something that's been around for forever. Can we explain it completely? No, not necessarily, but it's been around for forever, and it could be something you could consider for your own use. And so that's what's fun about it, though, isn't it, Wes? Where we look at it, and of course it's there, it's sitting next to us, it's part of what we're doing. People talk about plants and how, as you mentioned, Justin, they say, well, it's safe because it's natural. Yes. And where did digoxin come from? Which is a heart medication.
Yeah.
Foxglove. You chew on foxglove, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's these things came from somewhere. And I think we've gotten so far away from source of everything. People don't know how to grow their own gardens. They don't know how to process the food once they get them in a way that they can use it. And it's amazing to me. I teach a sourdough class, sourdough bread making. People don't know how to make bread anymore. I thought, for heaven's sakes, I mean, how have we gotten so far away from the source of everything, whether it's sources in nature, sources in other kinds of ways of thinking? It's just amazing to me how far off the beginning we are, if that
Well,
makes sense at all.
two dirty truths. One is that humankind will have always lost more information collectively than we have gained collectively. And that's just the nature of being a hive style intellect. I mean, I'm talking on a cell phone right now that I couldn't individually make myself. I would have no idea how to repeat that process from all the things that they use to make a cell phone ring, and the technology behind it. These require a mass amount of human intellect in the same room with a common goal. And that's where information is advanced upon. People reference the pyramids and talk about the complexity, but they had 100 people who knew how to cut stone in a room all together with the same idea, and intellect compounds when it's brought together. Intellect dies when it's kept by itself. So, for instance, the man who made my phone, like I was just talking about, he could probably repeat that process given the right crew, given the right budget. But I mean, we talk about technologies as though they are lost. They're not lost. They just need to be rediscovered. And then once they're rediscovered, that information needs to be shared. And everything in this world that's worth learning has not been completely learned, especially with gemstones, especially with Eastern medicine, especially with spirituality and the layering of our dimensions. That kind of stuff, even when it is figured out, is cast aside because typically it's contrary to mainstream scientific thinking. Right, wrong, or indifferent, anyone coming out of left field and saying, this works better than what pays you $5 million is never going to be heard. That's why we're still driving gas cars and electric cars haven't caught up yet, because 84% of the gross world economy is tied up in the production of fossil fuel. So
Sure.
we're unlearning how to relearn this information. And if you follow the dollar to the ground, that's why a diamond that's mined for $100 becomes $10,000 in the US, because we have completely unlearned how to do these things ourselves.
Mhm.
We've completely given over our freedom of ability for ease and convenience. Used to be a man before he was married had to prove that he could build his wife a house. Well, I could probably build you a house, but you're probably not going to want to live there. You know, just the basic tasks of being a human in today's world. We're so far back from the rock process. We're so far back from a streamlined system of good and services where if your tooth hurts, go find someone who knows that yarrow takes away that pain. You know, there's an
Mhm.
aspirin at the store that we'd rather make 3 stops to buy than opposed to a plant growing in our backyard that we can go out and harvest with one fell swoop. So ease and
Sure.
convenience is the death of higher learning.
Yeah. And of course there's a place for all of it because I certainly there are times that I do go buy a loaf of bread because I don't feel like making it. But to have at least the ability to do it. And like
Yeah.
you said, you might be able to build us a house. We may not want to live in it, but maybe together we can build a house that we want to
Exactly.
live in. And I
Hmm.
feel like that connection that we have in our communities have been lost to a great degree. And COVID and the separation that we all had at that time did not make it better. We've got so many people who are no longer able to communicate with each other or interact. And that's been a huge detriment, I think, especially to our teenagers.
Exactly. Well, the best methods too, the holistic home methods. For instance, I have one of my best friends who lives in Eastern Washington, owns a ranch and does everything from ground up, raises his own beef, does his own vegetables. His wife is big into canning, sourdough, like you had said. So very much, early 19th century home strategy. And you just don't see that anymore. I mean, people aren't aggressively asking for that. They're not wondering enough to try. And that's one of the things I love about gemstones is it's essentially you can't learn everything about it. There are things that we're learning for application purposes that were being used thousands of years ago that we have just rediscovered. So
Hmm.
it's interesting to see that the undercurrent in the Middle East and China especially is completely incorporative to gemstones and healing completely. There's no question about it there. It's why didn't you try that at home first? Energy manipulation, especially deep meditation, things like that. All of these things go hand in hand.
Yeah. So when we speak of gemstones, I think people think of a variety of things. They, like you mentioned, think of a diamond or a ruby. And so have you noticed, Wes, whether it matters? I mean, we've talked about the energy and the frequency and vibration. Are you seeing that in your day-to-day
Well,
business?
I'll tell you this much. In my experience, when you start overlaying gemstones and their expected effect with the zodiac, that can be proven and true. For instance, iolite, beautiful blue gemstone. It's gorgeous to look at. One day it'll be set to take over where tanzanite is when supply drops down. But we sell more iolite to Libras in the office than we do anything else. And I had noticed this, and I'm like, I wonder why that is, because literally the last 5 people who have bought iolite have been dead set middle month Libras. And we just noticed little ticks like that. So when you research iolite and you pull it up, apparently it's a seer stone that draws Libras in, and it's captivating to them, is the word that was used. And I'm a Libra, and I have a lot of iolite thinking about it. I don't know whether that's because it draws on me through, some unseen or unheard measurable quantifiable force, or if that's just because I'm reading what I'm supposed to like and liking it because it says so. But what's the harm in either way of that? What's the harm in that methodology? If something makes you good and it's not habit forming, it's not controlled, it's not going to hurt you, yourself, or others, then as a professional, go ahead, have that. If carrying a piece of citrine in your pocket makes you feel happier, it still makes you feel happier. So
Mhm.
why would I take that away from everybody? If iolite is the most gorgeous thing a Libra can see, well, then I guess I better get some more. You know, we find ourselves reacting to these requests more often than we are expecting them. I'd say it's about 30% of the clientele that we come in believe that in some way a gemstone is able to do something health and nature for them. I can tell you that personally, I don't feel energy associated with it. My grandmother, my great grandmother, was a tribal healer on the Four Corners Reservation in Arizona. She was a Navajo, and she was absolutely into advanced Reiki. She made a business out of it. She paid all of her family's bills, putting gemstones directly on people's skin and coupling that with massage. So
Mhm.
she never went hungry. So if it's not working, it's not working in completely the wrong idea. It
Right.
sure
Right.
works well for something that's not supposed to work, is what I
Sure.
always say.
Sure.
And
And we talk about the placebo effect, Justin.
mhm.
I'm sure you've seen that in your practice as well.
Oh, 100%. I I do a brisk business with testosterone and bioidentical hormone management, and the response rates on this, like I know how long it takes that injection of testosterone to actually get into your bloodstream, but there are plenty of clients who, after their very first dose, will say, "I feel different already," and I say, "I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh, Carry that
And
forward."
yeah, absolutely. And actually, now that I say placebo effect, I don't know if we've ever defined that. Justin, would you feel comfortable defining the placebo effect for our listeners?
Sure. So a placebo effect is the effect of believing an intervention presented that should have no impact has an impact. And often it's used in control situations in scientific study where if you want to test a drug, pill A, against not pill A, rather than not giving the control group a lack of pill, which would be a notable difference, you give them a placebo, a sugar pill was the traditional. And then you would compare the outcomes between group A and B. And if you're doing well, then no one who's getting the pill knows whether they're getting pill A or pill B. And the researchers don't know who's getting which. And it's double blinded. So the placebo plays a very important role. Its power is decreasing over time, interestingly. So the placebo effect is notably less powerful in modern studies than in classic studies. So there is awareness. Your population is polluted because everyone knows, oh, am I in the placebo group? You wonder if you are. You can't study in a vacuum, nor would you want to.
This is a good experience from about 2 weeks ago. So we have a client who's undergoing quite a bit of surgeries. I'm not going to use names here because that's a little too invasive. However, she kept calling and saying that her memory was failing and she wanted a piece of amethyst because apparently that's the memory stone. And with more readers and mineralogical effects in it, the longer it's supposed to help you maintain that memory. So she came in, we bought her an amethyst, and true story, she forgot it when she left the office. So I had to bring it back to her a day later, and I gave it to her in person, and amethyst is relatively inexpensive, so I gave her a really, really nice piece. Well, she hasn't forgotten a single thing since she's had that amethyst. Now, is that amethyst the piece of string around your finger that reminds you of something, or is it literally calling out her memory? I'm more inclined to believe that carrying that piece and the act and ritual of putting it in her pocket every day is just the reminder she needs. I don't think the stone's nature of energy dispersal or anything like that has much to do with that, but simply having that piece of amethyst in the group associated mentality that she bought it to remember, put it in her pocket, she doesn't forget as much that day. So that's a classic example of something that actually works, be it real power or be it just the act, just the carrying of that stone causes her, oh yeah, I'm forgetful, but I have an amethyst, so I'm not. you know?
Yeah.
So I can't say that's the stone doing what it's described to do, but amethyst for the last 3,000 years has been described in similar ways, has been talked about as a prophecy stone, talked about as something that augments your own aura. And getting into that discussion, human aura is influenced by all kinds of things, from our own indication and our own emotions to the things that we bring into our circle to try and combat that. Personally, I carry a big piece of citrine with me every day because it's associated with wealth production. Do I make more money because I have a citrine? Probably not. But do I make more money because I'm carrying one with intent? Absolutely.
It's funny you say that because my crystals talk to me.
Mhm. I hear that
So
all the
I
time. I mean, I would never laugh at you for that. I'd never laugh at you for that. My grandmother used to say that she could physically hold them and feel the buzz in her hand.
Mhm.
And, different strokes for different folks. I'm not saying she couldn't. Yeah, just
Mhm.
because I don't have that same effect. I mean, if you shrink it down that much and you start basing it on personal experience, then everybody's personal experience is their own. Therefore, gemstones could not be qualified or quantified as an actual measurable, prescribable thing. And
Right.
if they could, trust me, I would be absolutely at the doctor's office like, I have a common cold. Please give me some malachite.
Right. Right.
So,
We don't base science on anecdotal evidence for that very reason, because
mhm.
that is that that's just a lot of personal experiences that aren't measurable, you know.
First of all, too, it requires somebody to be okay understanding that they understand nothing, in the words of Socrates. The only way to show you that I am capable of teaching is to say that I know nothing. You know, these things, when we talk about the innate way that our world is put together in order, in mathematics, in shape, light, direction, especially, that's when you start quantifying a gemstone. Because, I mean, we have stones in our collection that are only green to the human eye. In any other spectrum, in UV, in anything, they're a different color. So we have to remember that's a humbling thing to say. Just because we see something to be the way it is, does not mean that that's the only way that it exists. Stones like alexandrite, where they're green by daylight and red by candlelight, that's the stone telling your brain how to perceive that based on light in the environment. So if lighting is one of the biggest principles of how to sell a gemstone, there's a reason behind it. It's because you're getting a different experience and different wavelength from any direction that stone is looked at. So you have to understand that just because we see something the way it is doesn't mean that it's easily repeated, that it's non-ordered, that it's non-typical. I mean, we have to look at gemstones as an entirely layered portion of the human psyche, because not only are they appealing to the eye, but they're appealing to the mind. And when
Mhm.
something is appealing to the mind, the body soon follows suit. So if you have a good example of something that is supposed to do X or Y, then likely you'll start showing that those X and Y do equal something. You know, is it enough to heal a cripple? Probably not. But is faith in an item enough to heal someone? Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, and what I love about all of the holistic sort of methods is that they have different layers of truth for different people, and kind of what you just alluded to, Wes. I think that what I experience, if we all were sitting in the same room looking at something, where a crystal or a gem, we would experience different things. We may have some commonality, and maybe that's because we all have some sort of wonder or potential teeny little bit of faith in some of this stuff, or maybe it's just because we're in the same room. Who knows? But that's where some of that collective and community can make a difference, I think, in how we can support each other in these experiences. And like you said to Crystal, she says she hears crystals speak to her. I have too. I know a lot of people who have.
Mhm.
And we wouldn't laugh at that because that's been that experience. And if it's something that works for that person, and like you said, is non-addictive, non-harming, and all of those sorts of things, well, then for heaven's sakes, carry crystals. I have friends that put their crystals in what we call our brocket. and and I have a friend who said she took off her top and then her bra one time and crystals went flying across the room. And I mean, I know a lot of people that have had that experience, and great, that's fine. It doesn't hurt anybody unless it takes an eye out when it comes out of the bra, I guess. But it's beautiful to honor each other's experiences and then also to do some education. And so, Justin, when you're educating somebody on maybe a holistic pathway, or maybe they come in and they say that they want to do something that may be in the holistic realm, how do you approach that as a practitioner?
Well, I am very goal oriented. So, what are you trying to achieve with whatever your intervention is? Okay, how do you feel this is going to assist you getting from point A to point B? Um, why did you select this method? Understanding the journey that a person went on to arrive to this is what I feel I need to do for myself. Um, honors their experience. Um, and if you're going to support it, gee, it's good to have that background. And if you're going to try and pick it apart or ask meaningful questions, then you should respect the process that brought the person there so you can be insightful in your questions. Um, I'm I recall as I used to teach or previously taught nursing at a community college, the same one I graduated and got my nursing degree from. So that felt nice and full circle. And I remember there's like some 4-paneled, if it's complimentary and it's good, here's how you support it. And if it doesn't do anything, here's how you support it. Rather than taking that approach, I let my personal practice be informed by more of a coaching insight, which is to say, okay, you're coming to me with a reason and I've determined it's non-harmful. I will accept that you are a whole person. That's the coaching. It's like you are capable of being full, complete, and healthy. This is what you want to do. Great. Tell me more. Let me be curious about it because you're going to do it. Like,
Right.
Sure.
I'm just here to back you up and provide some safety rails. And so that's my kind of broad stroke approach to it.
Sure. And if you come to it as a curious being, as you say, one of the things that will shut people down, especially people who are feeling like they're in some sort of physical or emotional crisis, then they'll go behind your back and do all kinds of things that you no longer have any knowledge about, and they can become harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And they also are less likely to tell you what they're really experiencing because they feel discounted or disvalued. And I love that coaching approach. And when I talk with my clients of any kind, I always do the same thing and just, so what have you experienced with that? How did you find it? Like you say. And I would sometimes have to say, I don't know enough about that to really even comment. Let's get back
Mm-hmm.
together on it or something like that. And to really, as you say, honor their experience. I mean, there's some things that we know are probably not going to be helpful and potentially harmful, which we would have to say. However, if it's just something that we are unclear about or don't see a potential difficulty, it's really important, I think, to most people to know that as practitioners, we still get to learn stuff. And maybe I don't know enough to report back, but I will find it. And then they
Mm-hmm.
know that you're a human and they know that you care about their experience. And I feel like that's a really valuable level to the practice.
I really
I agree.
appreciate you having said that because admitting, like I said, sometimes you just have to be okay with understanding that maybe I have a piece of this study, but I don't have all of it. And it's through that process of recognizing that you don't have all of it that you start finding out more and more and more. I really like that.
Mhm. And I have opportunities to work in very Western modalities, but in very Eastern kind of approaches, which is I have cancer patients with metastatic processes that are 100% going to kill them.
Mhm.
That's accepted. That's known, and they're opting to not be treated by oncology or urology or whoever was leading their care, and instead they've decided that they want to go with this bioidentical hormone approach that they've read about. Will you please consider it for me because no one else will consider it? Is the ask I get, and I have said no, and I have said yes. And so that's always an interesting situation because it's not gemstones, it's stuff made in labs and produced to high standards and injectable medications and pills that can alter how your entire body functions. But I don't see much difference between that and having a person come to me and say, I would like to discuss gemstone therapy, acupuncture, ayahuasca experience that I'm going to go do in South America. Cool. All right, let's talk about it. Let's see if we're going to do this as safely as possible. If you just absolutely want to do this and you understand what your risks are, and I can ethically support you in it, let's do this. This is your healthcare, not my healthcare.
Exactly. And I feel like the newer practitioners are more moving into that sort of a direction. and and people are no longer expecting their practitioner to know everything. In fact, they challenge them if they say they do, and I think that's healthy. And I feel like giving an opportunity to for the person to be able to have some level of control over their care, because when all of our parents and grandparents were young, the doctor would say or the nurse would say, do this, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. So
Paternalism at its finest.
yeah.
Sure, sure. So, Wes, I know you've had, I don't even know how much training and experience with these gemstones. I know it's a lot. And when the first time we met, you told me what it was, and I'm like, awesome. But I had no idea what that meant. Could you explain a little bit in layman's
Yes.
terms what
For
that
sure.
means?
So going back all the way to when I was a barefoot kid running outside, putting rocks in my pocket. That's literally the beginning story there, like everybody else. I thought these things are awesome. No one knows the complexity behind it. I was a weird kid. I'll just be open and honest. I had rocks everywhere and carried around a lizard half the time. I mean, so I've always had that profound sense of wonder about things that existed in order and weren't ordered that way by man. Personally, because I believe there's no better evidence than that for the existence of a higher power, that there are unsolvable math problems that we as a human species cannot solve, but the answers are right in front of us. And that's the reason podcasts like this exist today, because we can see the evidence of the higher calling, and yet we cannot unravel that mystery for ourselves. So that really lit my fire as a kid. And, you know, being a red-blooded American male, I went and joined the military, and dreams became dreams and not realities. But having gotten out of the military and transitioned, I was very, very much injured in Iraq and ended up on every narcotic known to man. And very similar story to a lot of other failures. I was completely addicted to oxycodone, no end in sight. I did some time in jail because of these things. And upon getting out and going actively through recovery, everything's slowly been brought back into my life. Everything is, it's like restoring circulation to a limb. So because of my honorable service in the military, I qualified for a lot of benefits that Justin qualifies for as well, where your education is paid for, and literally it becomes point and shoot. What do you want to do? And I always ask everybody I meet, what did you want to be when you grow up, and why aren't you? So in kind of eating crow and taking my own advice, sitting in the shambles of my old life, I'm like, well, this has always been an honest part of me. This has always been something that I don't have to lie to do this, and no one's going to set the expectation other than myself. And with a whole quiver full of arrows in education, you know, I might as well be doing what I love to do. So I enrolled in GIA, which is Gemological Institute of America for the layman. I'm currently involved in getting my 9-bar done for graduate gemology. I'm on level 6 now. Each certification through GIA is given a certificate afterward, much like nursing, where you have to recertify and learn relevant information as it's presented. So GIA is very much an ongoing process, and I have coupled that with a bachelor's in science and business through, you know, online schooling avenues that the military has paid for both. And this has been very much a grassroots enterprise where we had nothing to lose. And there's only a few things that I am conversationally able to give accurate gradation to apply to a business model. Gemstones having been a lifetime hobby, and I mean a hungry hobby too. One of those where you'll read a technical manual cover to cover just to learn one thing. So I kind of sharpened that skill set and brought it out just as an above ground to see where we wanted to fall. We didn't know if we wanted to do jewelry. We didn't know if we wanted to do other levels of production or faceting, because I'm qualified to do all of those things. But ultimately, the one thing that's always kept me hungry is what we've been talking about, not knowing. I wanted to be able to quantify and explain why stones are the way they are, why symmetry is the way it is in nature, because nobody is familiar with the amount of geometry that a gemstone can produce. Different crystal habits are undeniably interesting because it occurs naturally. So coupling all that information together and sprinkling it with a little bit of passion has put us where we are here. Now we're 3 years out from starting almost. We'll be 3 years here in about 2 months. But I mean, it has been just nonstop learning.
So I'm curious, what is the actual collaboration between the two of you? What is it that you do together?
Ah, lots. Justin recently was up for the International Gem Show. This was very much a hands-off enterprise for the first couple of years because he has his jobs and his livelihood, and basically I kept asking him to throw money at the problem until we became established in the office. And we actually met in a military treatment program. Justin, you don't mind if I speak on that, do you? Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we both went to the American Lake Substance and PTSD program because both of us were in similar situations. And as opposed from running from those obligations, we met under fire and have been friends ever since. The situation is such that his unit and my unit, even being in different branches of the service, were within throwing a rock at each other overseas. So a lot of the same things that I saw and experienced, he saw and experienced. Whether that's a blessing or a curse, that's up to the educated man to decide. So kind of always leveraged that situation as well. I'm a staff gemologist in my own gem company because of these things, and I have the temperance of experience to be able to work with international individuals because I've been in some of the most horrible positions possible. And everything in my life and in Justin's too, I can speak with confidence. Everything is a fresh plant. Everything is freshly grown. Everything is honest to the ground, because once you've hit ultimate end, you can either go the ultimate route and start over, or you can give up and sit. And as opposed to giving up and sitting, I don't think either one of us were willing to take that. So
Yeah, Wes is really the day-to-day ops. He's boots on the ground. He's making sales and talking to clients. I do very little of that, but we collaborate over the phone or via text nonstop, nearly daily. And then the International Gem Show was an interesting experience because we set out for what we thought was a known sort of event. Uh, very local, lots of local businesses, a good opportunity to insert high country onto the awareness of a lot of people who are players locally in Seattle. And though it is an international gem show, that's not what it was. There were no locals there, and no one was super happy to have us around.
we were actually told to leave.
Wow.
we got asked to leave. Security and everything. By security, I mean like full on police got involved to the point where they were standing there wondering why they had gotten involved. Talked to people, walked around, and just like we paid our entrance fee and talked to people who were selling rocks and gems and trying to learn stuff.
Man, the International Gem Show, I would say this. I would say that is the last 2% of the industry that anybody wants to deal with. That is where the money is made. There is very little feelings in that room. Crystal, you probably would have hated it there, because it's literally it is a pound of flesh per every sale.
Yeah.
And we went as an objective business owner. You have to have a wholesaler's permit and you have to be invited to this event. So when we received the invite, I was like, absolutely, I want to see this. I want to be a part of whatever this is going on, because if there's millions of dollars to be made, it'll happen in that room. I mean, and these people don't blink at what we would consider a lot of money. At our level in high country, $10,000 is a lot of money. But that's the starting bid on some of this stuff. It's very much like going and buying a racehorse. They don't care if the horse lets you ride it off the track, right?
Right.
So we really got smacked in the face. And this has happened to me time and time and time again. There is a significant gulf in age between 50-year gemologists and the newer folks in the community, myself, and even me with 25 years of experience. I mean, the way these people treat each other and their clients, I can't believe they're making any money, because it is literally just one and done, as much money as we can get under the table, call it good. So we spent about a year between Justin, myself, and my wife figuring out where High Country fit, because we knew we have an incredible inventory. All of our inventory has been sourced through GIA or a similar alumni situation where people are helping us to stand up with products that I wouldn't have expected to see for 50 years,
Yeah.
So we have a very, very, very dynamic presentation. But you can't come into High Country and say, I'm going to make a ring today. You can make a ring with us. It'll take you a month. You can come in and pick out the stone, even from the rough, and be a part of the process. So with the International Gem Show, that's so far removed away from the individual client. There's just no rapport that's built unless you open your wallet. So you see very much a toxic side of the industry that way. I would much rather encounter my clients in our office at the ground level, no matter why they're buying a stone. People just punish people with information in this industry. If you don't know something, there's not a very good way to get an answer. There's only 3 of us gemologists to this level in Western Washington right now that I know of that are practicing their craft and not just keeping it as a hobby. Most of those people will charge you just to have a segment of their time. And I always like to say, my time isn't free, but my opinion is.
Right.
We walked away from that show rather than saying what just happened, realizing, all right, here's what the strengths are. Here's how to actually get high quality gem product into the country, rather than doing what we were trying to do before, which was laborious and involved many individual contracts and was taking up all of Wes's time. And so decide, make the storefront happen, bring people into the store, make consulting a focus, get the lab equipment on site, all there in one place, and lucked out with really good property because Wes knows how to shop around for it. And and that's made the huge difference, having the actual storefront.
people don't know that we don't primarily do jewelry. We wanted a piece of everybody that we didn't have. I don't have a bench jeweler at High Country. I have 4 of them in their own businesses that will take a client from us and bring them to completion on a trust-based relationship. They know buying through High Country, they're getting the absolute best product, verified natural to source, no paperwork necessary, no big brother, no GIA coming over my shoulder and saying, are you doing your job? Because I've studied and accomplished those degrees. So much like a doctor, I can practice in the field that I've studied. So as long as it's grading, typing, sorting, all of those things, we can do that in-house in front of the client and build a lasting rapport. And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed, is seeing we don't have to be the international community. We don't have to be even the big community here in town. We don't have to be a giant retail store. It is very much individualized, person to person. Let us help you find out what you think is best for your need. And that absolutely works.
It does. And from my perspective, as I met you somewhere between 5 years and a month ago, we have
got a
no
month and a
idea.
half.
Yeah,
We got
yeah.
a month and a
Okay.
half.
Well, so it seemed like longer than that because it seems like we've communicated several times. What I found is that I ran into Wes on a Facebook page and started talking to him because I do just dabble in building jewelry, which is most of it not ready to be seen. But so I wanted some gems. And so I drove it's 2.5 hours or so from
Mhm.
my house to your shop. And you guys met me and showed me the gems that we had been talking about. And you offered to send them to me in the mail, but I wanted to see them in person. And so I drove out and had a wonderful time with you guys. And as I mentioned, you told me way more than I could comprehend, and you told me everything I wanted to know. And it was really fun. And what I enjoyed about it, and this is what drew me to ask you and then Justin to the podcast, was the passion and the openness and the story that you told me about how you got to where you are. And when I was speaking with your wife about I'm sorry, her name escapes me at the moment.
Larissa.
Yes. When I was speaking with her about how she felt about the gems and things, it was also sort of on some of my level with, and I found this and I like that and this is what people have told me.
Mhm.
And that's huge to me because again, I know I've probably indicated this, but it's that connection and the bringing us together, whatever it is that puts us there, that matters to me more than the beautiful gems I got from you because we have made some other connections.
Mhm.
And I think that's amazing. And so if all we ever do for each other in these experiences, whether it's you with gems, whether Justin's you and your holistic and your alternative and that kind of care, I feel like we've made a difference, even if we do it one person at a time. And as our listeners hear this, I hope what they can hear from us is that we care. We
Mhm.
want to assist people to find what is true for them and to do it in the safest and kindest way that we can as well, and that we're all open to learning. Is there any sort of thing that you guys would like to add from your perspectives? And Crystal, you too?
Well, the final pillar of the ANA statement does focus on alternative therapies is about cultural diversity. And without a doubt, accepting gemstones into the practice of individual clients or communities is important. That's a very reasonable thing for a nurse to do. And I do think that traditionally, when these views were not accepted, it's led to some of this extinction of knowledge or loss of knowledge. Because if this knowledge isn't going to be shared with people who end up as repositories for knowledge, as healthcare providers, scholars of various sorts, it's hard to share it. It doesn't get documented in Western accepted ways. So leaning into the cultural diversity and acceptance of the fact that every culture really has a gemstone acceptance.
Mhm.
Pretty rocks always have meant something to all peoples everywhere, period. End of story. And they
Yeah.
will continue to. And one of the elements that's recognized around integrative health is that access to these different therapies is not universal and equal because it costs money to get Reiki sessions, and it costs money to get acupuncture, and it costs money to get gemstones. And if you are interested in if gemstone practice is important to you, then finding a seller who is ethically sourcing it and, farm to tabling it and is going to get you the best possible value, I think that there can be a marriage between the commercial side of the gemstone business and really supporting and honoring the diversity of a client, saying, okay, I do actually know where there are places you can get products that are reasonably priced and can perhaps support your practice. And so that's where I come from. Yeah.
To build into that too, it's absolutely important that we don't allow the economy to overshadow people's ability to purchase these days. People use ethics in this community as a dirty word, especially with things coming out of the laboratory that are engineered to be guaranteed fake, is what I call them. Laboratory diamonds have significantly impacted the community, and people are looking at the wrong end of the ethics club. Essentially, they're saying ethics in country for the treatment of those poor people who dug them out of the ground and who had to ship them and they were getting shot at, and blood diamonds, it gets pretty dark in the diamond industry when you talk about ethical sourcing. However, these aren't 21st century problems. These people depend on the diamond trade in the same way that we do as the end consumer. I learn all the time working with people who speak primarily Urdu or Pashto, or they're coming out of the Afghanistan conflict in that region and stepping up and saying gemstones are our #1 export. And they really are. We're seeing stones from regions that because of conflict, we couldn't access 5 years ago. But now they're back on the market, and these economies in their infancy, although there is certainly plenty of unethical stuff that happens in the industry, what's really happening is the people like myself, like Justin, like you fine ladies, we're the ones who are taking the absorbed hit from that. One of my stones probably pays 4 families before it ends up in someone's collection. Well, those 4 families are unable to get that money any longer because natural stones are being given a second seat to ethically sourced diamonds. Where's the ethics in taking 6 people's livelihood away from them to make $30 on a guaranteed fake? I mean, the price difference between these things is horrible. And that's where you start seeing people really looking at gemstones sideways and dirty. It's because we're still being fed on the De Beers motto, where a diamond is forever. You have to buy her whatever. Some of my favorite stones to sell are unique in nature, rutilated pieces that offer internal characteristics that you can absolutely not recreate in the lab. And when you start recreating stones and you start doing it to the degree of perfection a laboratory stone offers, then you cut into that part of the gemstone that makes you tingle and feel good. Because man-made creation just does not do that for people. When I'm selling man-made stones, I'm selling the process. I'm selling the fact that it takes 340 hours to cook one diamond correctly.
Right.
I'm selling the fact that in the US, our laboratory-made diamonds are made by the hour. You get paid hourly for the stone. That's the human nature you can't sell the beauty of something expected to be beautiful. That's one of the biggest cornerstones to what we do, is that you're finding that level of complexity and beauty on this planet without the aid of another human or without human intervention. So when you really start splitting it down, where Justin and I came back from the international show saying, we don't want to be those people that have no romance in this. We don't want to be those people that discount the person who's taking all of their month's savings to come over and be a part of that international show and leave empty-handed because the dollar bill is just too dirty to stand in the way. So we really get a take-all-comers kind of effect in the office, and people are a lot more open than I've ever expected that they would be. I say stones are valuable for 3 reasons. Either it's an heirloom, something that somebody gave you. That doesn't matter where it came from. Grandma's sapphire ring, be it synthetic or not, is grandma's sapphire ring, and you have to talk to these people like that. Even if I have to deliver a fake to someone and say, hey, in our testing process, we found out that this stone isn't legitimate, I still have to deliver that in a way that that person's great grandmother can be honored and cherished through that process.
Yeah.
So I think of what Justin and I are doing is really a cognitive way to take back this industry and show that there are still people out there shaking a basket in a river to feed their family. And those things do come to families in the US, and they're cut here, they're processed here by people just like that, who are doing it just for the passion. And you start measuring quantifiable health effect when those passions are rewarded. So we can all agree there's something that happens when a good gemstone is produced, whether that's through just the simple craftiness of the person who made it, or whether that's the complexity. I mean, we have 9 species that don't even originate on this planet. So you start
Yeah.
thinking about universal languages, love being one of them, music being another, profound beauty being another. There is an undertone here where all of those things are an unwritten language, but we all speak it. And that can be showcased and encapsulated in a well executed gemstone, especially a natural, well executed gemstone, where all of those individual differences have come together to make a product that's truly radiant and then deserves a place in your life.
Something that's
Yeah.
both a testament to nature and to the skill of humankind.
It's a rivalry.
Yeah.
It absolutely is, because our laboratory typically stays 2 steps ahead of what you'll encounter naturally. I mean, you're more likely now, sadly, to find a synthetic or augmented stone these days than anything you pick up. It's probably 10% window for a truly natural stone and a precious variety. There's plenty of semi-precious out there that's not being messed with and will be beautiful for eternity and remain affordable. But when you get in the top three, emerald, ruby, sapphire, black opal, even when you're talking diamond these days, people don't have the trust that they used to. And
Right.
that's where this process, the behind the scenes, I didn't bring a single rock with me today. That's because behind the scenes, what's really beautiful is the level of connectivity. It's what, 110, and I've had 4 conversations with people in different countries who I've never physically met, but who are an absolute part of our process here and doing things for the absolute same reason that we are, because
Yeah.
they like the stone, makes them feel good inside, and they want to share that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And Justin, I feel like you brought forward what Wes said, and all of his passion in it, that the things that connect us are the things he talks about, the beauty of the earth and the beauty of humanity when we allow it. And I feel like that's a lot of it is when we allow it, because I feel like this conversation, the conversation I had with Wes and in the office and the conversations we've had since then via primarily text, uh, has has shown me that it's a valuable thing to him having that connection. And I see that in what you're saying, Justin. And I know Crystal and I have had a connection for what, 26 years. And it's those pieces that in my estimation, when we do these podcasts and we talk about the mystic things that people experience, that is my objective and my goal. And I love to see that shows up in all of the other areas of my life. And I know, Crystal, you have got to have some thoughts to add to this that you have felt during this episode.
No, more than anything, I really appreciate the passion, and I totally get um, how passion and being able to fulfill a passion feeds you, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. Um, and I just, um, I love that you're combining your passion with also healthcare with Justin. And not to say that Justin doesn't have passion also, that's not what I was saying, but but yeah, I really, especially being somebody who's kind of doing the same thing as a Reiki master and a nurse, um, I feel like it's important to have that complementary thing in medicine, because we're treating every patient we treat is different than every patient we treat. There's no same patients, and even if they're identical twins, right, Andrea? And so I just really appreciate your efforts and your passion, both of you.
It's been a blessing. It really has. I mean, as a combat infantryman, I've been in lots of teaching environments. I've been in lots of austere environments. I've been immersed in several things you wouldn't want to be immersed in. But one of the things I've always been grateful for is the time that it gave me in other countries, experiencing other cultures, experiencing other languages, experiencing other practices, and what we consider to be questionably normal here is so foreign to so many different places.
Mhm.
I mean, the way that we can even sit and dissect this issue, these conversations happen overseas. They're wondering why crystals make them feel good too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we always have to remember at the end of it is that we're all beings full of wonder. We are all curious about our surroundings, and 90% of what we do throughout the day is in direct reaction to something that's happened in our environment. Gemstones have always been used as a milestone for those things: anniversaries, birthdays,
Mhm.
Christmas. It sparkles. I mean, men and women. Don't ever let anybody tell you that it's just women who like sparkly things,
Yeah.
because some of our best clients are men.
Yeah.
And that's repeat. And that it's been a symbol of how to show someone you care about them for a long time. And like Justin said, one of the first forms of currency is a sparkly rock. And I can see why, because it's not just one person taking the time to sell you that stone. It's probably 20 people who have had a portion in bringing that stone from wherever it originated to you. And a guy just like me who's either going to try to make his commission and to sell you something, or someone who's going to say, I got just the thing. And I can tell you every piece of work that's been done to that. And as a scientist, I can quantify it to hours. It takes 1,500 hours of someone else's time to produce some of the stones that we have. That's something done with intent. Now, speaking spiritually, anything done with intent has always been said, be careful doing things with intent because they'll happen. Talk about the power of manifestation. Talk about that. Well, when you focus on a gemstone to produce and make it beautiful, and it turns out that way, it is. And all of that time that went into it progressed that process together. So,
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah. Thank
sounds
you very
excellent.
much.
Thank you for
Wonderful.
having us.
Take care.
Bye now.
We'd love to hear from our listeners. To leave a comment, share a story, or ask a question, email us at listeners@mysticdetectives.com. You can also find out about our Patreon and other interesting things going on at our website, mysticdetectives.com. As always, we invite you to subscribe, share, and leave reviews to support the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Stay curious.
And keep exploring.